Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be showing you how to water your bonsais correctly. Because believe it or not, this is where most people go wrong. So the most common thing I get asked is how often or when should you water your bonsai? So watering your bonsai is a huge discussion we can go on, but the most basic and simple advice I can give you is this. Never, ever, ever let your bonsai get this dry. You can see it is completely, there's no moisture at all in this tree. So if you allow your tree to sit like this in the boiling hot sun on a summer's day, it is going to die. Trees really need water to stay hydrated. So you can see how a lot of the leaves have shriveled up. You can see they've just completely shriveled up and dried up like this. And this is completely because it hasn't been watered enough for it to stay nice and hydrated. You can also see there's some bugs on the tree. So often the bugs will start attacking a tree when the tree isn't very healthy. So you can see with lack of water, now you've got other issues on this tree. So there's many methods of watering. We can use a spray bottle like this. This is something I would only suggest if you have 1 or 2 bonsais, because obviously it does take quite a bit of time, and most of the time we don't get enough water through the soil. But if you're happy to just keep, watering that little tree and just squishing the water out, this is a perfect method. Then the next method I would like to talk about is just a nice watering can. So when you purchase a watering can, you really want the spout to have small little holes in, so when the water comes out, it comes out nice and fine. Then another method, which is my favorite, is a nice attachment on your garden hose. So this means you can water lots of trees throughout the day, and it really soaks the tree and cools it down. Another nice reason I like using this is also it washes all the dust off the plant, and the dust won't then clog those dormant buds in the plant. So the first method of watering, you can use your spray bottle, and then you're just going to start spraying the tree. But you can see how I'm spraying one section because I want all that water to drip through the soil and keep it nice and hydrated. If I just water on this side of the tree, then all these roots aren't going to get enough water to them. So you need to make sure that you water the whole root system. You can just see I'm giving it quite a bit. But now you can kind of see if you had a lot of trees, this will get quite tiring. Imagine doing this to over 50 trees. It just wouldn't work nicely. And you're just going to keep going and keep watering that tree. So you almost want all the water to start dripping through the drainage hole. So then you know that you've given enough water to the tree. So this could then dry out very quickly. So where I come from, South Africa, it's a very dry, hot climate. So now let's say I watered this tree in the morning. By the afternoon, it could be completely dried up because it's in such a small pot. So what you really need to do is you need to every day you need to check up on your tree. So another nice method is you would want to scratch under the surface, and if under that first layer of soil it's still nice and moist, then you might be able to skip watering that for those few hours or that day, just depending on the heat of the day. Cool, so method 2 would be a watering can. I way prefer this method because when we water the whole plant as if it's raining. We almost want to imitate rain on the tree. So you can see over here, I'm just going to start watering this juniper. I'm going to water it once, wait for all the water to seep down through the root system, and then I'm going to give it another nice water. And you can come around just like that. And you can see a really nice big soaking of water. and we can even do this 3 times. Because the soil is so nice and it drains very nicely, then we never really have to worry too much about root rot. Root rot normally comes when you keep a tree inside or it's just not getting enough sun throughout the day. So I'm going to come for my 3rd time and I'm just going to give it a really nice soaking, just like that. You can also see on this tree there's some really nice moss forming on it. So with me keeping the soil nice and moist throughout the day, then naturally moss will start forming on top of the soil. So this is also a really good indication that you're watering your plant nicely. Eventually we would have to remove the moss because it will start interfering with water seeping through the moss, and then it won't get to the root system. But for now, it looks really pretty. So another nice perk is if you keep the soil nice and moist throughout the day, you'll get beautiful moss forming on the soil. So this is just through watering constantly and giving the soil nice moisture to it. But a really big rule of thumb is keep that soil moist. Never let it dry out completely. So option 3, and this is by far my favorite option of watering bonsais. So you can see I've got a really nice attachment on the end of my hose, and I'm just going to start by watering my lovely Juniper procumbens nana. You can see I make sure I'm watering that root system really nicely. I'm washing off all that dust and I'm cooling and hydrating the tree. Now I'm going to come to the next tree and I'm just going to slowly water that tree. And you can see I'm coming back to the same plant, giving it a nice bit of water, and then back to this one, just like that. So where should we keep our bonsais? So something I always recommend, especially if you have a very busy work schedule and you don't work from home, I normally then would keep my trees in either a spot where it gets morning or afternoon sun and try avoid that direct 12 o'clock sun when it's the hottest time of the day. But then again, something you need to do. So when you buy a tree or a bonsai, you need to do research on that type of tree or species, because some trees, like your Japanese maples or other examples, really love water to stay hydrated. Where if you have a juniper, if you skip a day and it dries out just a bit, it's not the end of the world, because they are a little bit more drought tolerant. So that's something you need to go and do on your own, is just do a bit more research in what that tree or bonsai requires. But rule of thumb, as long as the tree is getting about 4 hours of sun, that is perfect. And then if you have a very busy work schedule, try avoid keeping the tree in that hot sun throughout the day. So for example, where I come from, like I said, it's very hot and dry, but there's other parts of the world that aren't as hot and dry. So something I always focus on is the soil mix, which I will obviously address in another video. But if you're having a climate that's very dry, you want a soil that doesn't dry out too quickly and retains a bit of moisture. But then if you're in a climate like, for instance, the UK, in winter it rains all the time. So if I understand correctly, because obviously I don't live there, I don't think they water throughout winter because it's got such a wet winter. That's also dependent on where you're placing your plants and so on. But you also need to kind of find out, what does your climate, what does your climate show at the end of the day? So I'm sure you gathered by now that the most important thing is to keep the soil moist at all times. So I often water my trees daily because they grow outside nicely in full sun. Sometimes I even water twice a day in the very, very hot seasons. But then in winter, we want the tree to just dry out a little bit, and then we would re-water. So in winter, you don't need to stress to water too often, but you still need to keep that soil moist and then let it dry out just a touch, and then you can re-water. So in winter, we also get condensation, so it also keeps the soil a little bit more damp, and the sun isn't as hot at that time of the year. This is a tree that was kept inside. So often I don't like to keep trees inside. Some people say that some trees can live inside, but I'm such a purist in feeling that trees should all be grown outside. But this person kept this tree inside, and you can see that she's now overwatered the tree. It never really fully dried out ever. And also when you're keeping something inside, it's not getting that natural sunlight, so it doesn't dry out as quickly. So you can see over here, I can tell straight away that it's very, very root rotted, because if I wiggle the tree like that, you can see over here, the roots have completely sogged up, and there's probably not too many healthy roots in here. Where if you see over here on this tree, it's so sturdy in the pot, it doesn't even want to wiggle around at all. Can you see over here? Where this one, straight away, I can see that it has been overwatered just like that. So at the end of the day, you should really enjoy watering your trees. It's the one time where you can start to notice how they've grown. You can start noticing if there's any issues on the tree. And it's my favorite time of day because I go outside and I spend at least an hour in my own thoughts, just simply watering my trees. I love it. So if you can just change your mindset around watering, then you will love it too. So something I always say is, if you're feeling thirsty and it's a hot summer's day, I can only imagine how thirsty your trees are feeling. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. It was really super basic and straight to the point, but I hope you learned something, and I hope you guys keep your trees nice and hydrated. You can give me a follow on Instagram, and I'll see you all next week.